today with Bob Rothstein, the municipal prosecutor for Lakewood. Bob, what can you tell us a little bit about your experience and your job?
Well, as far as experience, we've been prosecuting, I guess, about 10 years now in Lakewood, and we are in a couple of other towns, but I primarily do Lakewood. I was born in Lakewood. I've practiced in Lakewood my entire career, which goes back to about 1974, 75, somewhere in there. I've essentially been in Lakewood for 65 years, I guess, and obviously seen many changes. Not necessarily for the good or bad, just changes. As far as prosecuting, it's our job it's the police's job to enforce the law. It's our job to make sure that justice is done within the court system with regard to any offenses that come into the court. And we try, at least, to treat everyone fairly, regardless of race, creed, color, religion, or political belief. And hopefully we're succeeding.
What are the most common infractions you're presented with in court?
The most common are probably either speeding tickets, careless driving tickets, which actually some of them stem out of a speeding ticket, but the police officers, by giving a careless ticket, are actually doing the driver a favor, because a careless driving ticket is a 2-point ticket, where if it's more than 14 miles over the speed limit, it would be a 4-point ticket. And of course, there's always the beloved parking tickets that are there. I would say those are probably the major tickets that we see. I mean, there are certainly another large group of tickets are people either driving without a license or with expired licenses, and of course you periodically get drunk driving or driving under the influence.
Now, tell us a little bit about the plea bargaining process.
There are certain cases we can plea bargain. A typical plea bargain would be if you have a 4-point speeding ticket, we quite often can take it down to a 2-point ticket. If you have a driving on the without a license, because your license has expired, we can change it from driving without a license to driving with an expired license. Those are fairly typical. There are other things we can do. I mean, if you have points and you want less points, there is a no-point unsafe driving ticket that the state has put in as the classic plea bargain, that you pay a surcharge, and it's somewhat expensive, but you can get rid of the points. And again, you know, if you have a combination of tickets, where you have somebody did something where you ended up with 2 or 3 tickets, we can work with that and make them less than 3 tickets or even 2 tickets.
Now, does a driving record affect plea bargaining?
It probably ultimately does, but it doesn't affect it with me, because the way the system is set up, I don't have access to the driving record, so I never see it.
Mm-hmm. Now, people that do get points on their license, how long does it take for points to come on?
If you go 12 months from the date of that the conviction without getting another ticket, 3 points will drop off of your license, or a maximum of 3 points will drop off your license every year, essentially. So if you have a 2-point ticket and you don't get another summons for 12 months, you theoretically will have no points. That you don't get credits for that, though. So they will never owe you.
Right. Now, this is a common question that people have. Do points transfer from New York license to New Jersey license, or vice versa?
I can't tell you what happens in New York, or any other state for that matter. I can tell you that if you get a ticket out of state, it is my understanding that whatever the points are for that out-of-state ticket will transfer to New Jersey as a 2-point ticket if that's appropriate. If it's a no-point ticket out of state, I don't know that they transfer at all, because there'd be nothing to transfer. The only thing I can think of that would be an example of that is if you go down into Maryland, for example, they have the cameras, and they pick you up for speeding. And if you just send the money in, you don't get any points. And the net result is I don't think anything would transfer from that because they wouldn't send it. You'd have to really check with motor vehicle though, because the list, I haven't checked that in years, but I know that's what it used to be at least.
If somebody gets a summons and there's either his name is misspelled or there's wrong vehicle description information on the ticket, does that affect the ticket in any way?
Not usually. I mean, as long as we can identify who it is and what it is, the police officer, we could amend the ticket at a trial if we had to. The police officer would know who it was and know what the vehicle was. If it's not you, that's a different story. But if it's you with a misspelled name, especially if it's a difficult name or a longer name, I don't think that would affect anything.
Now, talking about trials, are trials common? Do people request trials, and do you suggest people ever request trials?
Well, I can't stop anybody from requesting a trial, and I can't stop anybody from insisting on a trial. For obvious reasons, which is a combination of the size of our calendar, which is usually fairly large, and the fact that when you're going one-on-one against a cop, the chances of winning are kind of minimal. I don't necessarily suggest them, but if somebody's insistent on having a trial, we'll have a trial. It's that simple.
What are the do's and don'ts as far as what to do in court and what not to do in court?
The first thing to do is look on the calendar that's on the wall outside and find out what number or at least what page you're on. Because when I'm dealing with 20 or 30 page calendars, I just don't have the time to go through the entire 30 pages to find their name. The other thing that they probably don't realize is there's more than one calendar in there. There's usually a first appearance calendar, there's a separate calendar for the public defender, and there's a trial calendar, and sometimes the inspection department cases are on a separate calendar. So know where you are on the calendar, and get in line and try to be as patient as you can, and we try to work as fast as we can.
What else can you tell us about the court system that you feel is
Well,
information you would like to get out?
There's a couple things that I can say that will help them with tickets. One is treat the police officer who stops you with the utmost respect, and two is if you ran a stop sign, which doesn't mean you ran through it without slowing down, there is no such thing as a rolling stop. You either stopped or you didn't, or if you had an accident because you stopped but went out and managed to get hit by the car that was coming out, be realistic and don't expect that we can take it to a no-point ticket. Don't expect that we can do much more than give you a civil reservation, which means that any guilty plea in the criminal court, which would be the municipal court, cannot be used as evidence in a civil case, assuming that you got sued for an accident. But your best chance of getting out of a ticket is probably on the street, as opposed to in the courtroom. In the courtroom, I can't just dismiss. I've got to do something. I mean, it's not that I can't dismiss a ticket, but the chances of us dismissing one just for no reason are slim and none. There are occasions when there are reasons. Sometimes it's not you, it's somebody of a similar name. Sometimes the police officer is wrong on what he wrote, or he's wrong on where he wrote it. It's hard to go through a red light if there's no red light there. And mistakes happen, and sometimes people get lucky.
Now, when somebody believes he has that the cop has the wrong information about him and about the traffic stop, about the infraction, whatever it is, do you suggest somebody getting a lawyer for that, or is it somebody you feel that if the person honestly knows that he actually did not do anything wrong, do you feel he has a good chance coming to court and explaining that to you and being able to get off the ticket that way?
If it's possible. The problem is, I get people who tell me, well, I can make a right on red, and that's what I did. Except that when you get into the facts a little better, you find out that, yeah, they made a right on red, but they also never slowed down, stopped. They just kind of ran the yellow and turned right. That's not what the statute allows. You have to stop, make sure nothing's coming, and then make your right on red if it's legal. I've had a few people that have done that. The fact that it's 1 o'clock in the morning and raining is not an excuse. Practically, I understand what they're saying, but I don't care what time it is, you still can't cut through a parking lot. You can't run a stop sign or a traffic signal. It doesn't matter what time of day it is or what the weather conditions are necessarily. And the chances are that if a police officer sees you running something because there's ice on the road and you're sliding through it, they're probably not going to write you a ticket anyway. But again, your first encounter is with an officer. And my experience with the Lakewood Police, which really does go back 60 years, is they're reasonable. You treat them right, they understand who local people are, and they're not really out to kill you. They're just out to enforce the law and make the streets safer in a town that, quite honestly, the town has outgrown the infrastructure.